Okay, welcome everyone. This is the Market Snapshot, Indonesia Readiness for 5G and Edge Computing. I'm Daniel James, the founder of Arctic Technologies and co-founder of Olympia International Consulting.
Okay, my name is Hendra Surakusuma. I'm the founder and CEO of Delivery. And in my other capacity, I'm also now the chairman of Indonesia Data Center Provider Organization since 2019.
Okay, great. So we put together a short presentation to look at Indonesia in its current state and then also view its market readiness for digital transformation and some applications for edge and 5G. So this is analysis of Indonesia. It's the third largest Asia market for mobile users. There's almost 270 million people, which is also the third largest population of Asia. And it's got a very large industrial and agricultural economy, local economy. I thought it was really interesting that you guys have 150 million active internet users and 143 active mobile internet users. So basically over half the population is online.
Yeah.
Right. And that's
so
expected to
the population. I mean, the potential room to grow is quite big, yeah.
Exactly. A little bit low on the IP addresses. I put that in there, IP addresses, because that's a really key indicator as far as the like IoT readiness of an economy. What I've noticed, there's some countries that have, tens of millions of IP addresses, even in a small economy. Usually it's correlated to the number of IP cameras they have or just general online devices. So the more the IP addresses are available, that says, okay, there's going to be more service providers. There's already the kind of like the infrastructure built up. So in terms of a relative scale, Indonesia is quite low, but it's such a fast growing economy. And also the COVID-19 impact has really shown the need for future investment of some of these online or wireless, communication devices. So I don't look at the current state as really being a negative. It just shows that, hey, there's a need for some of these systems, and I could expect that it's going to pull forward a lot of investment.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. Okay, the chart on the right shows the current data centers. There's 95 data centers scattered throughout Indonesia today. 54 of them are based in Jakarta alone. So that just really shows where the epicenter of data is being managed. Can you talk a little bit more about the Jakarta market for data centers?
Yeah, it's a very big market, yeah, because a lot of headquarters of Indonesian companies are actually located in Jakarta, and also many multinational companies establishing their offices in Jakarta. So that's the reason why a lot of data center providers, including my ID Pro members, are actually building their data center in surrounding Jakarta, in Greater Jakarta. Cities like Cibitung, Bekasi, Bogor are the one that really expanding quite rapidly for the past 5 years now.
I was just going to ask that. What's the market over the last 5 or 10 years? Like, do you have any indication what, it's 95 now, but what number of data centers was it maybe 10 years ago?
10 years ago, I think only 6 players. If you try to
it went from 6 to 95?
Yeah.
In 10 years?
In 10 years.
Well, then that's a story. That's very interesting.
That's a story in itself. And only by 2012, there is one data center certified by Uptime Institute, which is Elite. So, but soon after that, a lot of companies actually getting certification also from Uptime. And if we talk about the total power capacity, currently we only have 53 megawatts. I mean, if you compare it to Singapore, in Singapore, there are more than 387 megawatts of power capacity, which represents around 5% of the total power produced by that country. As I mentioned to you before, so just this year alone, 2020, 3 of our members are planning to build around 60 megawatts additional power for their data center. So within 1 year, the number is already double now.
Amazing.
And of course, players like AWS, Google Cloud also investing their cloud infrastructure here in this country. So I think it's a very exciting era for us data center players to be in this field.
I can see that. The chart on the bottom shows the mobile carriers or the mobile coverage. And
Yeah.
right now there's no 5G. I believe that there's some early trials or some testing going on. I was reading a few articles about that, but basically it's 4G and 4G plus coverage. And you can see it's really strong in the big cities like Jakarta. But as far as getting out to the remote regions, you still see some 3G and even 2G or satellite, connections. So it's really hard to get out to some of those remote areas. So I think, especially with COVID-19, well, what's kind of interesting is that COVID-19 probably hit the main cities the hardest. What I've seen across Southeast Asia is these small islands, remote islands, they have nothing. They can control the.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, so they don't really need to shut down, but what they do need is to connect, regardless, And so getting those remote areas online with cellular coverage is going to be very, very critical for a lot of companies. I could just imagine like a bank that's headquartered in Jakarta, but has some remote branches or offices in other areas that are just physically unable to get to, absent of COVID-19. And now it's exponentially worse. So I can see that there's a lot of opportunity for that mobile coverage and being able to connect those remote regions.
Yeah. I think major telco providers already tested out this 5G connection. Companies like Telkomsel and some others. I think that the government still actually cooking the regulation now for this 5G.
Right. Speaking of government, there's a big push towards Industry 4.0. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the government policies or the focus for Industry 4.0, and also e-commerce as being a disruptive leader or just a main industry shift even prior to COVID-19. This data came from Statista, but this was all before the coronavirus. So that trend is going to only be further exacerbated. So maybe you could take a few minutes and talk about some of those government focus areas within those industries, and then what opportunities that could emerge.
Yes, this is quite interesting. So basically the one that producing this regulation about making Indonesia 4.0 is from our Ministry of Industry. I think last year this project is being launched. Basically a lot of our local governments is launching sort of like e-government initiatives. Mm-hmm. So many local government, like we call it under the province, there is a district and also we call it kecamatan here. They now actually already implementing some kind of e-education, e-health, and also e-citizenship applications. And many of these applications are actually previously it was only hosted in server rooms. It's not a data center.
Oh, I see.
But because it runs a very critical applications, our Ministry of Information and Communication, as well our Ministry of Industry, they already do some assessment to it, and they try to enhance the data center infrastructure of this government. So the government is planning to build a data center infrastructure for our government institutions, basically. And this 4.0, Making Indonesia 4.0, is under Ministry of Industry, and they will actually try to integrate this project with the Ministry of Information and Communication under the National Data Center Initiative.
I see. So is that largely a data center initiative, or is it data center but also the factories themselves, incorporating these technologies within the factories, like IoT systems, robotics? Is it more focused on the data center side for investment, or at the end use side, or maybe a combination of both?
It's a combination of both.
Okay.
manufacturing side, many companies, especially big multinational companies like P&G, Unilever, they
Yeah.
already implementing this kind of computer vision technology, mostly for the product inspection, quality for the using the vision, computer vision technology.
Hmm.
So they sort of like add some algorithmic, to the camera, so that the camera can actually find whether this object is this product is already good enough in terms of quality,
Right.
or yeah.
Okay. And then talk about e-commerce. It was already a fast-growing trend, and as we mentioned earlier, over half the population is now connected online. Anything that's noteworthy that you would say has changed after COVID-19?
Yeah, it's interesting because I believe there are about 3 or 4 e-commerce platforms that already get really well funded. They already becoming unicorn. One of them is called Tokopedia. I think their monthly revenue already reached more than 1.7 trillion rupiah, which is quite a big number. I don't know in US dollar. Maybe around 30 million US dollar per
Okay.
month.
Wow.
So during this COVID-19 pandemic, I think they increased the revenue numbers because a lot of Indonesians now are actually getting familiar to use this application,
Right.
because they managed to have a very simplistic design in terms of mobile application. So
Hmm.
I think just within these 3 months, Tokopedia, in case of Tokopedia, I think they increasing more than 20% of their monthly revenue. So this is quite interesting.
Wow. So that trend is only going to continue to increase over time. So what do you expect this is going to mean for the data center and service provider industry?
Okay, so basically, I can see that in the future, in the near future, the needs for edge data center will be increasing significantly, because a lot of people now are actually forcefully have to work from home, and some of the companies are actually having this lockdown situation where they cannot access their office because some of the employees of that office building are actually COVID-19 positive.
Mm,
So they have to be able to access their data center, right? But they cannot
right.
because they cannot go into their office. And a lot of people nowadays, especially in large cities, in major cities, in Jakarta, Surabaya, Medan, they try to access the internet from home. That's the reason why it is very hard for them to access Facebook, Netflix, Twitter, because all these people are actually accessing.
The mission critical applications. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So uh, I think the latency issue is something that a lot of people in Indonesia actually now experiencing, and we need to find solution for that. And edge computing is, edge data center is one of the solution.
Yeah, so that's an actually interesting topic. We'll talk about this a little bit more in a later slide, but there's actually two elements to the edge investment. One is to solve immediate known problems right now, which is like bandwidth limitations and connecting some IoT devices and being that interconnecting link. And the other is actually improving to performances that our systems have never seen before as it relates to 5G. So that will unleash like totally new technologies that don't even exist today. And so, you have a short-term need of our network can't keep up. So we need edge
Yeah,
computing to boost it. But then we have
yeah,
a more medium to long-term team, this long-term trend to say, hey, we need new technologies that don't even exist right now, that other countries are going to be implementing. Other vendors are solving these issues. How do we get that integrated into our system, and how do we upgrade our capacity using edge and a combination of edge and 5G to do that? So there's like a short-term and medium to long-term viewpoint on that. So
yeah.
okay. All right. So that very topic, I want to discuss about the roadmap to digital transformation. So this is not an Indonesia specific chart, but this kind of talks about some general trends that apply to any company or any, you could even think of a country at a country level. What does that roadmap look like to where you have kind of a crude, 20th century style business to a modern 21st century, fully innovative, interactive type of workflow? There's really 6 stages to this. Level 1 is unconnected, where you're planning for IoT. So you don't really have smart anything in your factory. It's just kind of passive devices that are standalone systems. Then level 2 would be your connected system, which you have devices, sensors that all connect to the cloud. And you see a lot of that today, whether it's in an emerging market, a mature market. That's the most common scenario we see, particularly with factories today. Then level 3 is really getting into the service level, where now everything can be remotely monitored and maintained. So you have a lot more sophistication with the IoT. I can access my data center remotely. I can access the KPIs and key information from my factory remotely. Level 4 gets you to performance and real-time analysis. So now not only am I being able to physically access certain devices, but now I'm getting a certain level of information that can be processed, analyzed, and put into a dashboard that I can real-time make decisions about my system. So it's different between being able to do service versus a predictive maintenance type of business model. Level 5 is integration, where now I'm using business process optimization and maybe even using some artificial intelligence incorporated in that. So I'm real-time improving and learning and getting better every moment on how to optimize my current systems. And level 6 is the final level of innovation. That's where you have complete business transformation and customer loyalty. So that's using like immersive experiences for your customers, for your factory workers. You have augmented reality, virtual reality. You bring them into your data center. You bring them into your operation, your retail store, whatever, from the comfort of their own home. So it kind of transforms your relationships with your customers from just a handshake or fully interactive and engaged. And they have information from supply chain to the inner workings of your operation to their actual custom needs. So if you can get to that level, final level 6, like that's the full business transformation. But as it relates to COVID-19 and sort of where we sit today, I drew a line between level 2 and level 3. I feel like most companies are probably at some version of level 2, and you will find some companies that have level 3 kind of remote service. But if you want to solve some of the urgent needs of COVID-19, you got to get to remote management. As soon as, if you are required from a system standpoint to be on site, then inherently you're at risk. So getting companies from that level 2 to level 3, I think, is the first layer to say, okay, we can now solve the biggest issues of COVID-19. Okay, so we can really have the greatest impact to mitigating that risk. While, by the way, once we've gotten to that point, now that we're remotely managing, now we have all this information, right? It's all being fed remotely. So now what do we do with that information? Can we get smarter about how we process and analyze and do all that? So that's where level 4, level 5, and eventually level 6 the dominoes start to fall. So I feel like for a lot of countries, but Indonesia in particular, that there's a big opportunity for companies who can offer services or companies to invest into technologies that can get them to that level 3 service.
Yeah, this is quite a complex, journey for digital transformation.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of companies in Indonesia are still in the level 2, actually.
Yeah, we see that in most geographies, particularly in emerging markets. You'll see that's the lion's share of the companies. But even in mature markets, it's not as far down the journey as you would expect. Maybe the multinationals, but that's about it. So there's still a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk more about the benefits of edge and 5G to Indonesia. Let's start with the chart on the right. This is a bit of an eye chart, but there's a lot of really meaningful information in this. The y-axis, the vertical axis, is latency, okay? From 1,000 milliseconds all the way down to 1 millisecond at the top, okay? So 5G, the sort of flagship staple of 5G is that we got to get down to 1 millisecond. You know, if we can have 1 millisecond of latency at an application level, that allows us to do full industry, 4.0, autonomous vehicles, complete immersion of, virtual reality experience. We got to get at minimum between 1 and 5 milliseconds. Like that's sort of the sweet spot that a lot of that like next generation society transformational level technologies can emerge at that level. We're not there yet. Okay, we got a long ways to go to get that, but that's the concept. Like how close to that can we get and how soon can we get there? Then the x-axis is the bandwidth throughput. Okay, so that's basically how much data, forget latency, just how much bandwidth do we have. So if you can combine high bandwidth with low latency, then that's that ultimate sweet spot. And so you can see in this chart here, I'm gonna have to move our screen. Okay. So 5G and edge computing is in that top tranche. So right now 4G is basically stuck on average at about 50 milliseconds. Okay, so if we can go, and so that's your existing mobile phones, everything that we experience today, you can get to about 50 milliseconds, and that's pretty good. I mean, we can do a lot with that. You get down to less than 5 milliseconds, plus, and it comes down to the high bandwidth throughput. So 4G cloud, you can see it's like 50 to about 200 milliseconds in that range. This is a logarithmic axis, so it's about 50 to 200 milliseconds. But really the bandwidth is limited. So that red column at the right, you can't really get access to that high bandwidth. You basically have to have a wired connection to do that.
Okay.
So for cellular, we're limited in terms of latency, but we're also limited in terms of total bandwidth. But what's interesting is that the blue and the purple vertical columns on the left, that's part of your NB-IoT and your LTE-M bandwidth today. So if you have IoT sensors that communicate, like maybe it's a smart parking, or maybe it's some low bandwidth device, like it's not sending a whole lot of information, but it's in some remote area and it needs to talk through the cellular network. We have that today through the 4G network, okay? So we can cover that, see where that circle is, says machine-to-machine connectivity. A lot of those applications that are in that moderate latency, low to medium bandwidth, we can do a lot just with that today. And systems haven't really been upgraded, especially in remote regions or emerging markets, to fully realize that. I live in Taipei and we have a lot of automation, but there's still a long ways to go that we don't even need 5G. Obviously 5G is going to help, but we can just add some capacity like edge computing to that existing 4G network, and we can do all that remote management. That last chart I showed you, getting to level 3, the remote management, you don't need 5G to get there. You just need the right bandwidth and capacity and the systems in place with your legacy, your existing 4G network to do that. And this chart sort of illustrates, okay, in terms of latency and bandwidth, like where do I fit in that map and what kind of technologies can I expect out of that, okay? So I would actually start with that and say, okay, forget 5G for the moment. What can we do with what we've got? What can we do with what we have right now? Okay, and if we just need some added bandwidth, then let's focus on added bandwidth. And let's get remote control, device remote controlling, and use those technologies today with what we have. And then as we start to roll out 5G, 5G is not going to be like you flip a switch and then tomorrow you've got 5G and you got 1 millisecond. It's not going to work like that. It's going to be in phases. Like at first you might have down to 20 milliseconds in the first, initial rollout of it. And then a year later, 2 years later, then they'll get down to 10 milliseconds. And then finally in its full glory by 2025, we'll have that, 1 millisecond, level of performance. So I think you almost have to figure out how to successfully roll it out, and what are those mission critical remote monitoring applications that we can do now. Maybe it's a smart city type of metric. It could be internal to a factory, with your data centers in Jakarta. How can you remotely dial in to those data centers and get the information you need on your existing system without having to physically go there? So that's that first tier. Okay. Then the chart on the left, okay, let me move us over. The chart on the left shows edge computing and 5G applications. So there's a whole wide range of applications. I didn't want to put everything out there, but some things that could be very relevant for Jakarta could be mobile service providers upping their bandwidth for the streaming games and Netflix and 4K streaming videos. Healthcare and education is going to be very important. The telemedicine services, especially with COVID-19, being able to diagnose remotely or doing certain types of testing and communication with the doctors. The doctors are at risk every time they talk to somebody. So the telemedicine is going to be very important. Teleeducation is also going to be, I think that's just the new norm that we're going to have to get used to. Industry 4.0 with advanced robotics, virtual reality within the factory, augmented and virtual reality, and drones and more automation. And then smart ag. We mentioned earlier that 14% of the GDP is agriculture. And those workers are highly at risk. And how can we automate and do certain things within the agricultural environment? It could be testing for their temperature. It could be just doing a lot of quality control testing. But I think that's where, particularly in remote areas, where a lot of investment could take place.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a few minutes and talk about your companies and some services you offer.
Okay, so we started, I'm talking about the Elitery first, yeah. We started this company back in 2007. It was actually a very conventional IT managed service company. But back in 2009, 2010, we heard that a lot of companies are actually in need of hosting their system in a tier 3 data center. So that's the reason why we started to build it. It took us about 2 years to finalize it, and we started the operation back in 2012. So it was the first tier 3 certified data center by Uptime Institute. We got the certification back in April 2012. Most of our companies, clients, are actually from financial institutions. So from around 100 plus customers, I think around 95% of them are actually from financial institutions. And back in
let me interrupt
2016,
let me interrupt you for a second. Related to the financial institutions, how has the last few months since COVID-19's really taken effect, how's that segment of the market really been impacted? Okay,
in terms of business operation, because this industry is actually one of the most heavily regulated industry, I think they have a very good resiliency, because the Bank of Indonesia, which is the Central Bank of Indonesia, as well as the Indonesia Monetary Authority, they have a very specific rules mandating all the financial service institutions to have DC-DRC. So in terms of business operations, I don't see any disruptions whatsoever. But in terms of maybe some kind of transaction value, because a lot of people in Indonesia are actually trying to hold to their cash, I think there are some business impact, but not so much in the operation impact.
Right, right, right.
Yeah. So I would like to also explain about Indonesia Data Center Provider Organization.
Mhm.
So back in 2016, I mean, Elitri and also University of Indonesia. It was actually I was having discussion with Professor Kalamullah Ramli. He's the Dean for Electrical Engineering in University of Indonesia.
Mm.
We already reviewed several government institutions data center and quite shocked about what we reviewed, because a lot of these government institutions are actually hosting their critical application in only a server room kind of hosting solution. So it's not even a data center. So IDPro is actually our first mission is to enhance the quality of data center infrastructure in Indonesia by having our own standard. So in Indonesia, we do now have our own data center national standard. In terms of technical requirements, what we did was actually try to accommodate what already have in Uptime Institute certification, as well as TIA 942, and we combine it and put some local flavors. Basically, that's what we did.
Great, great.
So currently we have 9 members and operating around 51 megawatts. So out of 53 megawatts of data center capacity in Indonesia, we are running around 51 megawatts. And as you can see from the right side, right on the chart on the right, some of our members are increasing their capacity, like NTT is increasing 45 megawatts. CBN also planning to build the new data center with 10 megawatts of capacity, as well as DCI Equinix also planning to build their expansion.
And what's the plan for future expansion with Elitery?
We are also planning to build a new data center. It will be in Jakarta. I cannot explain to you in details, but one we're going to build around. Several others, it will be edge data center.
Perfect. So you can solve a lot of these problems for your customers that we just discussed today. Do you expect a lot of the new customers, will it still be finance industry, or are you expanding to many different types of industries?
Yeah, as for Elitri itself, we're planning to expand our types of customers because all through these years, we're just focusing in financial service industry. Right. But we can also see in the future that manufacturing, also oil and gas companies are actually need more quality data center. So we also would like to enter that market.
Okay. I guess I should take the moment to plug myself. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm the CEO of Arctiv Technologies, and I'm a USA-based company, and we do data center and edge computing solutions. So we're a solutions provider. And I can do custom solutions for power, cooling, racks and security, and also some connectivity solutions. So we could work together to solve some problems in the Indonesia market. If you want to learn more, you can either contact me directly. I'm on LinkedIn, Daniel S. James II. And Hendra, how do they find you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's I think you can just type in my name, Hendra Suryakusuma, and search it.
With Elitery.
With Elitery, yeah. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Daniel.
I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like to learn more about edge computing, 5G, Industry 4.0, and many other new technologies coming online in Southeast Asia in 2020 and beyond, please visit our website at www.olympiaic.com. Don't waste precious time or money on expensive multi-week online university curriculums. Enroll in our crash courses and learn from industry professionals on both the latest technologies and marketing and selling strategies to boost your career and business. Our courses are available via on-demand, and we also offer live, customized sessions for company events. Become an expert and shine on the global stage.